So it's the first time ever this clause has been used to disqualify a presidential candidate. It's historic. It has far-reaching consequences. Your reaction to the decision by Colorado Supreme Court?
Look, we knew that this was something that could potentially trip up Donald Trump in his efforts to retake the White House. And the reason for that is because a number of conservatives, contextualists who actually believe in the Constitution and the way that it was written, particularly the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment that was now used to invoke to remove Donald Trump from the ballot. This has been something that at least 12 states have already begun the process of grappling with. And what was so surprising is that there were two individuals from what's called the Federalist Society here in the United States, a conservative jurist organization that actually believes that Donald Trump is not qualified to be president because of his involvement in the January 6th insurrection. Now, even though Donald Trump has not been convicted of sedition or rebellion, in fact, we know that the criminal cases that he is facing right now do not invoke sedition or rebellion. This was still an issue that was going to be weighed by state courts. And we saw in this ruling by the Colorado Supreme Court, they used Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch's own words in their ruling. And so now this is going to be something that the U.S. Supreme Court is going to have to weigh in on. And what it speaks to is how influential the Supreme Court will be, perhaps, in determining the outcome of the presidential election next year.
Speaking of the Supreme Court, as we were mentioning, we know that Trump's lawyers are set to appeal this, where in the Supreme Court, conservatives hold a 6-3 majority. While, of course, we can't predict what the courts will do. But, Eric, how long drawn of a process, of a battle, is this really going to be, according to you?
Well, the courts could easily expedite this issue. And because the Colorado Supreme Court has already weighed in, they have already made clear that, in fact, when they wrote their decision expecting this to go to the Supreme Court to adjudicate this. And so they stayed their ruling until the Supreme Court makes a final decision, which means in the state of Colorado, while the primary election is in March 5th, and the ballots need to actually begin the process of being printed up by January 5th. And so the hope is that the Supreme Court could rule on this by January 4th. But the Colorado State Supreme Court makes clear that Trump's name will be on the ballot until the Supreme Court weighs in, even though they came down with this ruling.
Okay. Now, we know that Trump lost the state of Colorado by a wide margin last election. But what bearing do you think this ruling could have in the other competitive states and on Trump's campaign?
Well, the concern now is that this could be a cascading effect for a number of key battleground states that Donald Trump is looking at, because we know one of the states that is also weighing this issue is the state of New Hampshire. And there's growing concern that New Hampshire is both a battleground state, but also it's a state that has importance in the early primary. In addition to that, we know other battleground states, including Arizona, are also states that are looking at this particular issue. And so if you get enough key battleground states that could keep Donald Trump off the ballot, that could have a tremendous impact on his ability to win the White House in 2024.
Let me just talk to you about what's happening in the Republican camp, because, of course, strong reactions have been coming in from Republicans, some saying that they will withdraw from the state's primary process. And if that were to happen, what will be the implications of that?
Well, if a number of candidates, and we've already heard from Vivek Ramaswamy, who has said that he will not be on the ballot in Colorado if, in fact, this is allowed to stand.
Right.
We haven't heard from a number of other candidates who have said they're willing to do the same thing, but they all believe that this decision was the wrong decision by the Colorado Supreme Court. But nevertheless, it is Republicans that have actually been the catalyst behind this move to invoke Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. To actually remove Donald Trump from the ballot. So while we know Donald Trump has a number of challenges that he is facing and to try to retake the White House, we knew that this would be one of the issues that would confront him, that a number of Republicans believe because of his impact or role surrounding January 6th, he should not be eligible. And so now candidates themselves, in addition to Donald Trump, are going to have to weigh what impact, what role this will play in the primary if they're going to stay on the ballots, or if this is a way for people like Nikki Haley to
Right.
actually decide that this is a way to actually defeat Donald Trump with him not being on the ballot in many of these states.
Well, interesting and major developments there coming in from U.S. politics. CTV News political analyst Eric Ham, appreciate you breaking it all down. Eric, thank you.
Thank you.